Hi, Ria. Thank you
Hello.
for joining us on Black Ink Cinema podcast. So you're a comedian, an actress, but before we get into all of that, you are a legit genius and you have a history in IT fraud forensics.
IT forensics, yes.
IT forensics.
So I did IT forensics, computer forensics.
And tell us a little bit about that. What does that entail for us?
Everyone hears forensics and thinks, ooh, exciting, crime scenes and law and order and everything. It's actually very clean. I work for the Serious Fraud Office. So they deal in complex fraud cases. So it was a lot of core dumping of information from computers, from suspects' computers onto disks. And then we wouldn't actually analyze it ourselves because it's fraud. We'd send it off to accountants and lawyers to see.
Right.
They'd look at all the Excel spreadsheets and get excited. And we'd just make sure there was no illegal porn. That was the job.
Yeah. And of course you can't talk about it, but I'm sure it must have been quite interesting. There must have been big companies involved and
the thing about cases is that they take years. I mean, I think there were cases that started before I joined the company and continued on after I left.
Wow.
And so it doesn't work at the same pace. Nothing works at the pace of TV. Nothing gets solved in an hour. All right. Yeah. There was never a crime scene where they go, okay, let's go to commercial break now. None of that ever happens. It is and also it is forensics. It's painstaking. You have to make sure that every single I is dotted, every single T is crossed, because if there's one mistake in the chain of custody, you can screw the whole case. Because if they can say, you know what, one of your people didn't get the data properly, so how do we know that you haven't accidentally corrupted the entire case by contaminating it with data from another computer? So you have to it's quite a meticulous job.
Jesus. It sounds it. And also before that, you were a virologist.
I was a virologist. That was, this is how weird a teenager I was. Viruses were my love in high school. And not like behind the bins, collect them all in Pokemon style, with the boys. I mean, I had a wonderful biology teacher in high school, and I fell in love with the subject because of the teacher, not in a dirty way. That sounds wrong. I didn't fall in love with the teacher, fell in love with the subject because he was a wonderful teacher.
Fine.
Yeah. And the thing that really captured my imagination were viruses. They're fascinating. They're not quite alive, but they are. But they replicate. They're not alive. They can't by themselves do anything. They have to. They're parasitic. They have to find a host in order to procreate. And they are microscopic, and yet can wreak so much damage, so much havoc. I wish I could think of an example of just off the top of my head. I can't think, but there must be some, there must be
something. Yeah. Something. You must be like the go-to friend right now of all things pandemic.
Do you know, it's actually it's a nice change because my PhD was in herpes viruses. And so for years people were like, oh, do you mind looking at this? And I went, I am not a doctor. I mean, no, I don't want to look down there. Thank you very much.
I love that.
Did you use protection? You probably should you should probably go see someone for that.
Yeah.
So it makes a nice change to be questioned about this, and it's exciting. I mean, scientifically speaking, what's happening right now is incredibly exciting from a science point of view. Obviously, from a social and economic point of view, there are grave consequences, and we're all aware of that. But from the fact that we have a new virus that's come out that we are able to study, the fact that we are developing vaccines at a rate that we've never developed vaccines before. Yeah. What we're learning about medical care, and I mean, there's a lot of knowledge being added to what exists in science because of how much the global science community is coming together to try and combat this. And we've never seen that before. We've never had so many labs all over the world even be able to share information because of the internet. So from that point of view, it is. I think that we're going to see that we've made a lot of progress in a lot of things in terms of coming together and studying things off the back of this.
So how did you go from forensics and biology to comedy and acting?
Okay, good question. The clues were there. I think the clues are there. So comedy comedy was when I joined it. When I found comedy, that was, think back to before, if you can, think back to before YouTube and before the internet, and when you were still watching, if you wanted to watch comedy, it was something that you bought on VHS or DVD, and then you would watch that one routine by that one comic over and over and over again. For me, it was Eddie Izzard. My parents had a few of those, and some of Victor Borg, if you've ever heard of Victor Borg. So we had these old classic videos, and I would watch them over and over again. And comedy was really, it wasn't at the time considered a proper job. You don't say as a 16-year-old, and I will be a comedian. It's something that you fell into. You can now, though. That's what's fascinating about it. Nowadays, we're seeing younger and younger comics that they turn 18 and they're allowed to come in the pub and they're allowed to get on stage and try their craft. And they already have a lot more knowledge about how to stand, how to act, how to hold the microphone, how to present themselves, how to write a joke, because of how much exposure they have to comedy through the internet that we never had. So our learning curve was a lot slower. It was for the outcasts. Those that found comedy and stuck with it were those that had sort of tried everything else in life and failed. They tried jobs, they tried day jobs, they tried, fitting in with their families or just the strict expectations that we had, and it didn't work. And they found comedy and it did work. And I think I'm definitely one of those people. I mean, come on, if you've got a high schooler that thinks viruses are fascinating and it's geeking out on that, I mean, you're good. That's a clue. I think that's a clue. And it just really suited me. So I actually started while I was still studying at university then all the way through my PhD. But I got to a point where I realized, hang on, I could work 10 hours a day in a lab or 20 minutes a night on stage. And
I think that's a pretty easy choice there.
No one applauds you when you walk into the lab in the morning. Nobody just goes, woohoo!
Everyone deserves an applaud.
Can't wait to see what you discovered today in the lab. No one does that. But, when you're a comedian, they applaud you before they even know if you're funny.
Yeah, that's
like, welcome to the stage. Yeah. I got addicted to that.
So your heritage is Filipino. I can't imagine there was that many Filipinos in the circuit.
No, I think I'm half Filipino, so I'm half Filipino, half German. And to our knowledge, there's only two of us. There is also Rick Carenza, who's half Filipino, half Scottish. And no, it's not something that we found. And actually worldwide, I was gigging in Dubai, and this wonderful girl bounded up to me and just said, "You're the foremost Filipino comedian in the world. I know, I've done all the research." And she was a budding comic, and I've been watching her progress on Instagram, and she's just been, and she's been growing and growing. But Filipinos are starting to come out, and there's a few of us out there, but we blend in really well as well.
So that must give you. Having that mixed heritage must give you a unique perspective when it comes to the UK circuit, your view on sometimes too unique. There are times where I'm there going, no one else is going to relate to this because I'm, how do you tell those jokes about, but you find common ground, and that's the challenge of course, it's better to be unique. You don't want to be just yet another comic that gets on stage and does a, you don't want to just be another comic that gets on stage and tells dick jokes. And so the more unique you are, especially now where people do have, they have so many options. They can go home and watch Netflix or Amazon Prime or go to the comedy club down the road. So when there is that much selection, then it is good to be unique because it makes you that more unique a product and more exciting. I think people will be surprised, actually. I think sometimes the more unique you are, the more relatable as well, in a very weird way. But I think some people could always find something to relate with you on whatever level it is. It doesn't have to be, same heritage or whatever. It could just be the experience that you're talking about. And I think sometimes we think because it's such a unique experience to ourselves that no one's got to really understand or get it. But actually you'll be surprised.
I think you're exactly right with that. And actually, it's always audiences. Always, it's interesting. There's sort of like a direction. You've got the audiences that imbibe your product, that consume your product, and then you've got people, for example, commissioners or people in the media who decide whether or not to put your product on a larger stage. And it's usually, it's funny how you could be told by a commissioner what an audience likes, and you're like, no, I just spoke to the audience last night. They were fine with my product. And there's a commissioner going, oh, we're not sure, you're a bit unique. I don't know what
that really winds me up.
And instead you're going, but they actually really like it. They don't mind. Like you said, we found some common ground. Turns out we're all human.
Can you imagine?
Crazy
we
talk.
Have similar experiences. What are the odds? And so you also host your own podcast.
I do.
Ria Lina's Behind, which I was listening to, and there's some, oh my God, you've got some great guests on there. I love the Black Lives Matter podcast as well that you did. I thought that was brilliant, and it is very important to separate the UK and the US experience, of course, because there's always this comparison, but it's like, it's not here to compare. It's just to understand the different experiences, although still have similar, effect.
Well, exactly. I love my podcast, Ria Lina's Behind, and the idea is, of course, to get behind the news, because I was listening to the news, trying to stay abreast of it, and just not on, like right now, things are happening in Belarus. I didn't study history. I didn't get taught that in school, so I have no idea what the context is of what's going on. And so I realized that I wanted to do a podcast where one expert would just catch me up on it. So not necessarily give me what they think is happening in Belarus right now, but just tell me, how did Belarus get to where it is at the moment?
Yeah.
And Black Lives Matter was very prominent in June, and still continues to be important, of course. And I realized I was like, you know what? I don't know the history of how we got to where we are, and why are these things happening. And the first thing that I learned was that even though we share a kinship across the pond with, because Black Lives Matter in June came from America, and we picked it up here in the UK, and it got picked up in other countries. But we do have very different histories, and we do have very different relationships between the races for different reasons. I mean, some of the same problems exist.
Yes.
But it was important. So that's why I separated those two out, and we spoke about the UK versus speaking about the US to understand that. And I love it. I love learning about these things, and these, in fact, we could talk for a lot longer than the hour, but most people, I mean, who's jogging for more than an hour? Like crazy.
I mean, they're just a sick person. They've got too much time on their hands.
Right? Like, you look gorgeous enough. Stop running. Don't eat a burger.
Stop. Exactly. No, I really enjoyed it. And I was just like, found myself just going through them and just like sitting there and learning and immersing so much. And it is really important to get, I think sometimes whichever the cause or the issue that you're dealing with, you just think that people know. And actually what I've learned this year is like the absolute ignorance, or just like lack of knowledge or understanding that people have. So they wouldn't know. You just assume, well, this has been going on for years and decades and centuries. And it's like, for some people, it's brand new information. Like they are genuinely or were genuinely oblivious and had no idea that this had been going on. And so I found myself having those kind of conversations, like, what world have you been living in?
I think it's exactly it. I think for me, what annoys me, and I think you hit the nail on the head, is people who form opinions based on a lack of information. I get very nervous about having an opinion, and especially with something like Black Lives Matter, because what I'm very conscientious of is, yes, I am ethnic, BAME, POC, whatever the term is now that we're supposed to identify by, but I am not Black, so it's not. But I am not white. So there came a point where all the white people on Facebook were going, it's my turn to listen. And I was there going, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I don't, am I allowed to have an opinion about which statue should stay up and which should stay down? And if I do have an opinion, should I even say it out loud? Because who am I in the conversation? So but what I was clear on was that I don't know enough. That's what I knew, is that I didn't know enough. So do people need to stop and listen? Yes, but I would like people to stop and read. I think that's what I would like to have seen more, is people going, what I know is that I need to read a little bit more and just learn a little bit more about this.
Yes. 1,000,000%. And before we swiftly move on, that term BAME and people of color, this is the problem why you would feel confused, is because people just get lumbered in one experience. And actually, that's not the same. You know, you don't know how a black man feels like. So just because you're part of this BAME or this people of color, you kind of get pushed into this other. You must know how it is. And it's like, you have your own discriminations and your own experiences and your own, but it's not going to be the same. So it is about understanding the different experiences that everyone will have and just listening.
It's tricky, isn't it? It's two sides of one coin, because while on the one hand, we wish everybody to feel seen and respected. And that is what part of identity politics is. Even though people make fun of it or find that it goes to extremes, identity politics is about saying, I see you. I see you as you are and as you identify. I think progress is being made.
Yeah, 100%.
I think progress is being made.
Yeah, 2020 has definitely been a bombshell. But where can people find you? What are your socials?
So I am Ria Lina, which is Rialina. And if you type that in, it'll come up on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. I think I have an underscore on some of them because on some of them, someone got there first with the original.
Those people. And it's I was the only one. How dare you?
Well, actually, I thought Ria Lina was quite a unique name. Turns out that it's very common in sort of Spanish-speaking cultures. And on Twitter, this woman, I assume it's a woman, I don't know, someone took the name @Rachaelrnr on Twitter in 2007 or 8. Or not. It's just some way back when. Used it for a month and have never touched it since.
They do that. It's almost like they suss it out and they're like, someone's going to need this one day. Let me just store it, keep it in the pocket.
So maybe it's my worst enemy.
She could see that you were heading for big stuff and she thought, let me just wait.
I'm taking her handle. Well, I've got an underscore. So there.
Yeah. So, of course, Black Ink Cinema podcast is about celebrating all things Black cinema. And we asked you to pick a film that represents Black cinema, and you chose the legendary Sister Act 2, Back in the Habit.
Back in the Habit.
Starring the one and only Whoopi Goldberg. And I just want to know why.
And Lauryn Hill.
Oh.
Actually, I think she's pretty...
We're getting to Lauren. We're getting to Miss Lauren.
Ms. Lauren, yes.
Ms. Lauren.
We're getting to Ms.
Yeah.
But yes, that was my choice.
Why did you pick Sister Act 2?
Do you know what? It's interesting when you first asked me to pick a movie in Black cinema, and I just went, and I immediately went, I don't know enough about Black cinema. I don't, and when I thought about it, this was a hugely important movie for me growing up. And I think that the reason it didn't occur to me straight away, it's because I grew up with Whoopi Goldberg. She was my idol long before I even thought about comedy being an option for myself. Wow. She actually, it's funny. I used to watch her over and over again in another movie called Made in America, which she did with Ted Danson.
Love Made in America.
I love Made in America.
Nia Long.
Yes.
Ted Danson.
Right? Yeah. Ted Danson.
Film, classic. Absolute classic.
I don't know anyone else who knows that. So Made in America, Sister Act, anything Whoopi was in, I was watching it. And she actually reminds me of my own mother, even though they're obviously two completely different races, but there was just something about her. So watching her was very comforting to me as well. We were Trekkies in my household, so she was an ex-gen.
Yes.
And she did everything. I do music, I do cabaret. Sister Act 2, she was able to sing. She did her comedy. You could feel the stamp of her influence over the film.
Yeah.
And I think that was just a dream for me. But Sister Act 2, especially more than Sister Act 1, I prefer it to Sister Act 1.
I was going to ask that because a lot of people, it's rare that people would pick the sequel to the original. And I was like, oh, risque. Love it.
Yeah. But so if you go through both movies, when you look at the high points, I think that those feel-good moments in Sister Act 2 are higher than the feel-good moments in Sister Act 1.
Yes.
Sister Act 1, you've got all of because Sister Act 2 is a feel-good movie from start to finish. There is no jeopardy. In Sister Act 1, you've got the jeopardy. And remember, these came out when I was a kid.
Yeah, 92,
I was young 93. When I said 92, 93. I was a young kid. So the whole mob thing and being chased by men with guns was really scary for me. And so those elements in the first movie, you know, the fact that she was almost on TV and then they saw her and then they found all of that. I didn't like that side of the movie. You want the music bits. You want the coming together. I also, if I'm honest, didn't really relate to they got to sing for the Pope because I was raised with no religion. So it didn't mean anything to me. Whereas, of course, again, as a child, the second one is children. And the second one is about giving children hope and going to a San Francisco slum, essentially, and saving kids that otherwise would be lost in the system and lost to the streets. I think there was just so much in it, so much that's inspiring. You know, the turning or the convincing of Lauryn Hill's character to come back on board, to say it is okay to follow your dreams, it is okay to be a singer at a time where, you know, her mom wasn't wrong to say,
yeah, of course.
You can't follow
like
singing.
Black mums. That's, you know, my mom's like, no, that's not a job.
No. And of course, from that movie, we get your shoulda, woulda, couldas. That's where I first heard you shaking your shoulda, woulda, couldas. So it's just the two moments in that movie for everyone who knows it is, of course, when the choir first come together and sing in front of the assembly, and then their final performance in the competition.
And I think, like yourself, it's weird because I think I do prefer, or maybe the second one is more memorable and is like ingrained in my brain because it was with kids, you know, teenagers. And at that time it was aspirational. You know, I'm looking up to these like really cool kids and they're so hip. And Lauren and the cast, you've got Jennifer Love Hewitt, for goodness sake. And they do such a good job in like representing kind of like being a teenager and feeling a bit lost and insecure and figuring yourself out. And like you said, I think it was more of you could relate to it. Like the first one, we're not being chased by mobsters. So
we're not, and it has Whoopi all over it, and they do that. They bring in really nicely from a cinematic point of view. They bring in the cast from the first movie for that one moment in the one performance in the retirement home. It just has everything that you want from it. We all have, as at least I think as women, we all have those movies. And men maybe too, but we all have those movies that we need to sit with a bucket of ice cream and watch at 3 o'clock in the morning. You know, you're like, I am not sleeping tonight. I am crying all night. And that is in my top 3. That is in my top 3. My other 2 are obscure, but that one that's the one that I'll watch. And if I don't have time, I will just watch those bits. I'll just watch the choir bit. I'll just watch the end bit.
Curiously, what are the other 2 films in your top 3?
Okay, one is Hello, Dolly. With Barbara Streisand.
Yes.
And just because, again, it's light, it's comedy, everything ends up, happy in the end. Barbara Streisand is stunning. She's just stunning to watch. And a lot of her other work has shades of darkness in it, and Hello, Dolly just doesn't. And the other one is a movie called Gigi. Don't know if you know Gigi.
I do know Gigi.
You do know. So Gigi is a beautiful romance. I mean, it's totally wrong by today's standards.
Yes.
Let's be honest.
There are lots of films.
True. But the guy who plays Gaston is so attractive. Just the perfect gentleman. And in this movie, he's rich and he's good looking and he's good to her grandmama and he whips her out of poverty. It's Cinderella. Gigi is Cinderella. That's what it is if you haven't seen it. But it's a beautiful, beautiful film. And I just, and again, it's from my child, something that I was introduced to as a child. And so that is another one that I sit there. And Leslie Caron is gorgeous. Yeah.
It's quite funny how those films have such a nostalgic place in your heart once you watch them at a certain impressionate age. And then they just get stuck with you. And they are those kind of, you want to sit there. It's indulgent and it's kind of comforting to kind of just watch these films. They have that effect. No matter how many times I watch Sister Act 2, I still have the same emotions. I still feel sorry for Lauren, and I'm just like, oh, all she wants to do is sing, Mum. Like, just let her sing. And so,
And I think that's the other thing, saying Black cinema. I mean, all of the talented roles in that film are Black actors.
And I think this is actually leading me on to my next one. Sister Act 2 felt a little bit more blacker with the
very
Black
much
cast, directed by a Black director. And so how did that, was that a barrier in you relating to the characters or anything like that? Or did you actually feel more like...
No, I think quite the opposite. I think that I spent my primary school years in California, very close to San Francisco. And then I came over, and then I came back to the UK because I was born here. I'm British. And we came back to a small village where I was, I think there was me and there was a girl called Cherry Brown, and she was the Black girl of the school and I was the Asian, and that was it. That's all there was in the middle school where we were, in the little village that we lived in. And I think that I think that it's probably part of the way that society is designed, but I've always related more to being in the POC group than the white group. And it's an interesting phenomenon because I am half white. I am as much Filipino as I am white. In fact, in some ways you might say I'm more white because I was raised in America and then in the UK, and then we moved to the Netherlands. My dad's German. We would go to Germany on holiday. I never even stepped foot in the Philippines until I was well over 30. So all signs point to more white than ethnic, but society doesn't see me that way.
No.
And you can't, it's unless you're blind, I guess, and don't know what you look like or don't have a concept of race, you can't ignore what you see in the mirror, and you can't ignore what other people see when they look at you. So I think that I've always identified with, as I said, I always saw Whoopi as a mother figure. She was someone that the fact that she was different to me. My mom is darker than my dad, so that the fact that Whoopi is a different race doesn't click to children. It doesn't click to children at all. So no, I don't. That was not in any way a barrier for. And in fact, I've always championed. When I was a kid, I didn't want blonde dolls. I wanted brunette dolls.
That's interesting.
That's who I was. I wanted the brunette. I always was cheering for the brunette, and often the brunette was Black, occasionally Asian. And if that was my team, that was the team I was on because I belonged on Team Brown.
Do you feel like
I don't belong on Team Blonde?
That was a little bit rebellious to, I don't know, society standards. Was that you're choosing this to kind of not fall into that trap of I'm not good enough or the world doesn't think I'm good enough? So it was almost like a protective barrier.
No, because I don't think I ever had that concept of the world, if I'm honest. Okay. I never, I'm in the world. I am legit. I am here. It's interesting because it's a lot of conversation now, isn't it, for children these days? When they're, one of the arguments for changing the history curriculum is to allow, young Black Brits to see themselves and to see role models in the history, because it was a very white history that was taught up until recently. But I never looked at history and went, oh, but what can I do? I never saw it that way. I saw it as the past. That's what happened. Those are the people that did that. And I believe that changing up the curriculum and teaching a more racially diverse history, for me, it wasn't so much about giving role models to children. It was about repositioning where we are right now and letting everybody know, hey, it wasn't your fault. You weren't there. But you need to know how we got here. Yeah. And you need to know the truth of what happened.
And what to do going forward, kind of.
And what not to do going forward. Don't make those mistakes.
Exactly. Talking about the cast and Ms. Lauryn Hill, who shone in this film. And honestly, I remember when I first watched it, I was just such in awe of her. Her voice is ridiculous in this. How did you think she did in her performance? And do you wish she'd done more acting?
Do I wish she had done more acting?
Yeah.
To be honest, no.
Okay.
I think that if anything, the part was almost written for her. It was that kind of, it was a bit like Jane Horrocks, and they created Little Voice for Jane Horrocks because she could do multiple voices. And then after she finished the run, they went, uh-oh, no other actors can do all the voices. We can't do Little Voice anymore. I feel like this was, you could have called the character Lauren. It was for Lauryn Hill. Her voice was phenomenal. Obviously, her singing ability is so far out there, so far beyond comedy movies, of that nature. But, and one of the things she did really well in the movie is go from a very unlikable, bitchy teenager to someone that you wanted to see redeemed. You were glad that she got on the bus. You were glad that she forged her mom's signature. You were glad that she stood up for herself in that way.
Yeah.
But I think that personally, I think she, you know what she look. I mean, she's stunning, but the hooded eyes and the looks. I mean, she gives some evil looks in that movie. Just, when she looks at her mother, and I just like cut scene. Her mom's in the shower.
Kill.
Precisely. But for Lauryn Hill, it's words killing her softly. Thank you. So I don't know. For me, I think that she would do I think she'd be stunning in a dramatic role. Definitely.
I think she would. I thought
definitely in a dramatic role. But I personally, I think I'd be too scared to watch it.
Well, that means you're doing a good job, surely. If she's left you with this long-lasting impression, I feel like she's done a great job in convincing you that she was that character. She did. No, she did a fabulous job. I think it was made for her. I don't think we could have picked anyone else that time that could have done it. Like, it was her or the movie didn't get made. 100%.
But if she had done more acting, I would have definitely said cast her in some horror, not horror, thriller, emotional, sort of stuff.
I think that would have
not a smiley person, is she? You wouldn't cast her in a sitcom.
I mean, you don't know. She's acting. She was meant to be a moody teenager. I feel like she hit the nail on the head there. That's how they are.
She did, yes, you're quite right. When you're not sure if they're acting, then maybe that's when they've hit the pinnacle of the skill set. Yeah,
exactly. So I actually would have liked to see her in more dramas for sure, because I think she has the capacity to range on different emotions. So 100% would have loved to see her in that. Also, there was another singer in there, Ryan Toby, who was in City High. I don't know if you remember.
I have not seen
group. City
High.
Yeah, no, it's not a film. It's a group. It's a music group that came out in like early 2000s. What would you do if your friends at home?
Ryan Toby played Amal.
Yes, Amal. Yes. He has a solo as well. So I remember years later when City High came out, I was like, Sister Act. I was like, it's from Sister Act.
That for me is the best moment of the film. Is
his voice,
his solo, or that scene, his solo. I like it almost more than the end, because I think watching the movie, even for the first time, they're going to win. You know they're going to save the day.
It's going to be a grand ending.
But you do not see that coming in the middle of the film, and you don't see it coming from him especially.
Also, because he's a bit of a choir mouse. Like, he's a little bit quiet and timid, so you see the graduation of him, like, building. He kind of represents the other nun who was quite shy, and then when she had her little solo in the first one, she kind of like had this massive voice, and you were just like, where the hell did that come from, this little person? And I feel like he kind of represents that same character.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. Yes, the trainee nun.
Yes.
Whose name? What was her name? Sister. It would have been Sister Mary something, wouldn't it?
Mary.
That's it. Sister Mary Robert.
Yes.
The difference being, of course, and when you learn a piece of information, you go, "Oh, I wish I didn't know that."
Yeah.
She didn't do her own vocals. Someone else did her vocals. Yeah, so I mean, Wendy McKenna, I love her as an actress. She's great, but she was not the vocalist for her
That
thing.
has ruined my childhood.
I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have told you, but exactly the same for me when I found that out. And so now even when I watch it back, I'm like, but that's not you.
What is the point? I almost feel like when it's the whole point of that character is that they've got that amazing voice. Just cast the person with the voice. It shouldn't matter how they look like, surely.
I'll be honest, I don't know any more than that. Any more
I'm now
of the
determined
details
to find out who.
Maybe she had nodules or something. I feel like we should. I'm
definitely gonna do a quick Google because I'm fuming.
She was dubbed by singer Andrea Robinson.
I just don't know why they didn't get Andrea to do it.
It's all, we often think that if someone can do one thing, they can do everything, but maybe she wasn't an actress.
Maybe.
Although she is gorgeous.
That's what I was thinking. I was like, she looks, she's pretty. Well, you learn something new every day. I genuinely didn't think I could learn anything newer about Sister Act 2, but thank you. Thank you, Ria.
But obviously, Whoopi did her own singing.
Yes.
And I love that.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes it, that's what you love about it even more, because Whoopi's not like, a Whitney Houston. It's not like the best singing in the world. So it's really authentic, and that's where the kind of comedy aspect as well comes into it, because she's almost kind of making fun of herself. Don't get me wrong, she can sing, but she's not, a Whitney.
No, well, it's all about, but this is the thing. You don't have to be the best singer when you can perform the way that she does.
Exactly.
And I would watch her do anything. If I go to her show, I'm like, what do you want to do? You want to sing? Great. You want to do comedy? I'm with you.
Whoopi's,
you want to do card tricks?
A lot of my favorite films from my childhood. I'm sure I've seen every Whoopi film. I'll be surprised if I haven't. But yeah, she's definitely.
So what's your favorite?
Oh, my favorite Whoopi film.
Mm-hmm.
That is probably one of the hardest questions someone's ever asked me. Do you know what film I do love of hers, actually? And this might not be a popular one, but Corina Corina. I don't know if you've seen that one. Yes.
Oh, I'm with you on that one. Ever since that movie, I blow at traffic lights.
Same here. Me and my sister do it every time.
I know. I just
you're in the car with us. They're like, "What are you doing?" We're like,
I do it. Just sort of 3, 2, 1. Yeah.
Oh my God.
That's another wonderful feel good. But at the same time, it's slightly uncomfortable, isn't it? Because it's
very uncomfortable. They have great uncomfortable conversations in there. Again, it's very relevant to what's going on now, but also at the time, and this history of Black women raising white children. It was honestly so underrated, and I just love that performance of hers, because it was more of a demure one. It wasn't. She's usually quite flamboyant or over the top, but she was very understated in Corina Corina. So
she was, and in fact, I think that's partly why it was uncomfortable, because the whole movie you were like, roar, come on, Whoopi, just roar. This is so wrong, and it's so uncomfortable, and this is so unjust. And I think actually it was really great that she was cast in it.
Yes,
because we know of her strength to be able to see it. I think it really highlighted how subjugated people were, because if you cast someone who can play the demure and you don't see the lion and you don't feel the lion in there, then you go, well, what was the big deal? Look, she seems fine. She seems happy. She has a job. She gets to eat. She has a roof over her head. If she keeps her head down, then she won't get beaten up and she won't get fired. So actually, we needed Whoopi in that role to really make every audience member go, that was sweet, but I feel like I consented to something on behalf of somebody else that I shouldn't have consented to.
Yes, exactly. And it was funny because the actor, I don't know why his name has escaped me. He's used to playing a kind of gangster.
Oh, I can see his face. Yes. I can see his face. Ray Liotta.
But even in that, you saw a more softer side to him as he kind of gradually, his ice melted throughout the film. And so I just think they actually worked so well together, and it kind of felt like an unlikely duo, but by the end of it, it was just like a magical film.
It was. And I think that I think what we kind of put into those movies, and we put it there ourselves as an audience, is like a romantic undertone.
Yes.
You automatically go, oh, romance.
Yes.
And also I think that was another really well done thing was that kind of like, what is the definition of this? What is okay? What isn't okay? Because of course there were white men that proudly married Black women in those days, and women to men and vice versa. You know, there were mixed interracial relationships, and they suffered for it, and they stood up for their love and for their partnerships. And we reap the benefits of that today, of the hardship that they went through, so that those of us now can love freely. So yeah, that was another interesting part of that film. It's underrated. I think people should watch it.
1,000,000%. So I think that would be mine. But again, like you mentioned earlier, Made in America is another one of my faves. 100%. I mean, the cast itself is just ridiculous. So
I think that is probably my favorite, but I feel that it's my favorite, but in a sort of the way that you eat a cheeky McDonald's every now and again.
Yes.
But I feel that Sister Act 2 is the one that deserves more promotion. So Made in America is my guilty little secret. Yes. And I love that. And actually, even at the time, you know, to have an interracial relationship like that was so unusual. And I'm quite sure that to get Made in America made, because they were dating, I think, briefly at the time, and that's one of the reasons it was made, is that Whoopi and Ted went out for a bit. I think they went out for a bit.
Especially him, because he's such an American hunk, you know? He's such an American, like superstar, and everyone loves him. So for that relationship to kind of get it was like the okay, you know? It was like the seal of approval. It was like... Okay. Because
I was reading actually about Buffy. So Buffy was running in the 90s, and I don't know if you watched it. There's a character on there.
I'm obsessed with Buffy.
You're obsessed with Buffy. Okay, so the bitchy cheerleader who eventually got together with Xander, Charisma.
Oh yes.
Played by Charisma. Joss Whedon wanted her to be Black. He said, I want to cast a Black actress. Oh, and the studio said, yes, but don't you long-term want her to end up with Xander? And they didn't want to have an interracial relationship, so she got cast as white, knowing that she was eventually going to end up with Xander. And so it's still ongoing that you see that.
But going back to Sister Act 2, I think the reason why, or do you think the reason why it was a little bit more blacker is because it had a Black director, Bill Duke, who also done Deep Cover and a few other movies and TV shows? Do you think that played a role? Do you think that made a difference?
You know, I mean, we can only speculate without totally knowing who influenced it. I assume Whoopi had a lot to do with that.
Yeah.
I mean, if Whoopi says no to the project, that project's dead in the water. Because I think they quite sensibly didn't go, well, if you don't do it, we'll just make another singing nuns show.
Yeah. And it just
needed Whoopi.
Yeah, 1,000,000. Yeah. She is Sister Act.
She is Sister Act. And I think that, so I don't know what the creative process was, but they obviously had, you know, Sister Act 1 was a huge success, and they wanted to repeat that. And I think that for once they made all the right decisions in deciding how to do that. And one of the interesting things that maybe people miss or forget, it's a throwaway line at the beginning of the film, but I think it means a lot. I think it has more significance in real life than people realize, is when they come to Dolores Van Cartier's dressing room and say, we need your help. We've moved into a school and we're teaching. We're at St. Francis now. She says, I went to that school. I went to that school. Yeah. And I think that line, for me, I think that indicates where the inspiration for this came from, is that somebody on the team, maybe Whoopi herself, maybe it's the director, or the writer, I think it's Judy. She's also Black. So there were a couple of writers, but they very cleverly, well, quite necessarily, I think, put a Black writer on the team. So somebody said, look, I would like to redeem the school of my childhood, and this is how I would like to do it. And so I think that's probably where they came to it from, is that, but especially if your main character, Dolores Van Cartier, goes, I came from those roots.
Yes.
To be this. And we're going to then follow a young Lauryn Hill as she wants to realize her dream as a singer. You can't do that and have her be the only Black kid in the village. Like you have to, that automatically means that there has to be a multicultural classroom for this
Yeah.
for this to grow from. It's a little strange at one point when she gets lost in the school and has to be shown around by one of the. I'm like, you went to the school.
Yeah.
You can't go to the school and then forget how to get around the school. It's a church school. It hasn't changed since you were there. They have not painted it. They've not rearranged a door. But that's where I think it came from.
Music plays a huge part in this. And you mentioned earlier that Amal's solo was your favorite.
He had that long name. He said, I identify with my ancestors. My name is...
Yeah, I love that part as well. That's very woke.
Yes, it was, wasn't it? Very, very woke.
Yeah, and I don't think you would get that if Whoopi and Bill Duke are not on it and you've got different directors. I think you get that little line, that gem, because they understand, they get it. There was something going on at that time, especially in America.
Amal. I think it's Amal.
Amal. Yeah. One of my favorites is when Lauren and one of her best friend are sitting by the piano and they're singing that like a cappella. That till this day still gives me shivers.
Oh, the harmony. The harmony that those two do on that is beautiful. I've listened to that many times, only trying to pick up the lower harmony because no one's Lauren can do Lauren. Trying to pick that up, but that is a beautiful thing, and it's one of those that you go, oh, when Sister Mary Robert comes in and goes, don't stop. Yeah. Everybody in the cinema goes, yeah, don't stop. Like, yeah. We'll stay extra. Please don't stop.
And I think for a musical, it's not as cheesy as you expect musicals to be. And actually it's quite cool and soulful and like there's real, proper singing going on, should we say. And I think, so that's one of the reasons why I love it. And I think why it's been so successful, and they've done a musical on Broadway because of it, because the music is great. I think it's definitely underrated when it comes to music, like films and musicals. It's not one people automatically think of, which I think they should.
Well, people don't think of it as a musical. And it's because, exactly as you said, that musicals, people cringe with musicals because people are singing out of time. Not out of time, but out of position. Like, there shouldn't be a song here. No one would walk into the office and go, hello, how are you? And all of the music is logically placed in Sister Act, which is why people forget that it's a musical, because they don't go, oh, they're singing again. They go, oh, okay, the choir is singing. And that's what choirs do. I think that's also why Pitch Perfect has seen such success now. Like, Pitch Perfect for me is the Sister Act of this era. Yes, and the reason is because they went, how do we do a musical that is acceptable to people who don't like musicals? You make the singing legitimate. You make the singing fit, and you make it stunning. I don't understand why for years you'd watch X Factor or BGT and the a cappella groups would always get kicked off. People didn't like the a cappella. I'm like, what are you doing?
My favorite. That's my favorite.
I love a cappella groups.
Yeah, I love a harmony. I love a band coming together and just absolutely killing it. So that would annoy me. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why I stopped watching it, because I was like, well, this is not working. I like singers.
You went with the dog.
Yeah, of course they did. And I was like, yeah, that's why we are where we are right now. So for those people who have been living under a rock and haven't had a chance to watch Sister Act 2,
they've been self-isolating.
What scene would you direct them to on YouTube to watch to entice them to go and watch Sister Act 2?
Oh, definitely Google something along the lines of Sister Act 2 choir assembly. That's a scene, the choir assembly.
Yeah.
That one, if you don't want to, because that is, as I already said, that's the pinnacle of the movie, but you don't mind. It's one of the things that even if you watch it now, you don't mind coming up against it again, because the build up towards it, the emotional build up.
Yes, exactly.
Is so well managed that when you get to that point, the anticipation, you'll want to see it again. And as I said, I sometimes just flick in, watch that scene a couple times, and then log out of Disney. Disney, by the way, if anyone is a Disney, what's it called? Disney Plus, Disney Prime,
Disney Plus, yeah,
Disney Plus. That's where you can see both Sister Act and Sister Act 2. That scene. If you don't want that spoiled for you, then you want to Google Sister Act 2 music class. And hopefully what you'll get is so she's teaching the music class and they're all bored to be there and they don't want to be there. And she's getting them to chant, and they have to chant, if you want to be somebody, if you want to go somewhere, wake up and pay attention. And they keep doing this over and over again. And then someone at the back of the class goes, can we like liven this up a bit at least? And then the whole class breaks into, if you want to be somebody, if you want to go somewhere, you better wake up and pay attention. And then they're in there with the rhythm, and they're in there with, and the whole class just comes together in that moment. And that's, I think, that's also a beautiful thing. If you just want a little snippet, watch that and then save the assembly.
Yeah, I was going to say that scene. I was going to say that scene, if you want to be somebody, because it shows them being like, you know, moany teenagers and bored, and then like her turning it around, and then it becoming a really cool hip class that you want to be part of. And that song stuck to me forever. Like, me and my sisters will randomly just burst into that, which is fun to sing.
It is. And actually, if you get the soundtrack, I think they do a fuller version of it.
Yeah, which is,
they do a fuller version of the song, of the scene that you were saying when they're at the piano. If Jesus was my, is it Savior? That one.
Yeah, beautiful. I might have to just download the soundtrack and just have a good old sing to that.
Keep it on your iPod. I tell you, it's a feel good for any time of day.
Ria, it has been an absolute pleasure. And I think once you've watched Grey's Anatomy and you've caught up, we need to have another conversation.
Definitely. I'm racing through it. So give me like a week and a half.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Week and a half. That's good.
Maybe give me a month. Give me a month. Just, you know, how often am I washing dishes?
I know. I was like, she's going to watch like 5 episodes tonight for sure. But honestly, it's been a pleasure having you on, and I wish you the absolute best. And it'll be great to come down at one of our screenings.
Oh, yes, please.
Great. Yes.
I'd love that. Fabulous. Well, thanks for having me.
Thank you, Ria. Wish you all the best.
Thank you.